Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back, and today we're going to be looking at the 1.7 mod update. This video is going to be paused and cut and stopped multiple times while I set things up to show them off, just because I have everything all over the place. I want to show you the new toys that are coming out in this update. So, the very first one is the Tigercat 630. This is a style, this is a skitter in the style of a single set of tires on the back. Unlike the 635 that has the double tires and a bigger thing there. So I know some people really wanted the four-tired version of the Tigercat skitters. So now you have this one. It has the chains on the tires with the awesome chain sound. 630, again, very similar to the other skitters. It's got the all the fun stuff on there. This is the newest Tigercat machine. Now, there isn't a lot of pictures or videos or anything of the existence of this machine yet, other than a few photos and a few videos on YouTube of people just kind of walking around the machine at trade shows and stuff. And I think it's pretty darn close. There may be a few details that aren't 100%, just because we don't have all the pictures that we want, but it is a beautiful, beautiful machine. The inside's actually quite detailed, very similar to the real life photos that we saw, but overall it is a very, very beautiful machine. Next one is the self-loader. So this is based off of the Mack logger truck that we have in-game. So this is an in-game Giants truck that we've modified, and we've added on this self-loading arm on it. So it's got the similar bunk that is on the already existing Mack that just has a single bunk, but like I said, we've added this piece on the top. So for the most part, this thing is fantastic. There's only one detail about it that I can't get working, and maybe that'll change between now and the update. If not, it's just not a big deal. So here we go. So when you fire it up, your boom actually becomes active right away. So your boom is technically active right now. Now, the one thing I can't figure out and I can't manage is getting a person up in there. So there's no guy up in there. So while you're operating, it's just this empty seat up there, which from the outside view doesn't look absolutely fantastic, but it is just one of those things. So maybe in a future version, I'll be able to figure out how to get a character up in there, but for now it isn't. So as you can see, very wobbly truck, right? So if you go for really long reaches and stuff, you'll see sags over pretty good on that one side. Now, that's where it comes in with the awesome addition of the stabilizers on the bottom. So now the stabilizers are set to the exact same control as what raises and lowers the skitter blade. So as you can see, as I lower the skitter blade option, it puts those stabilizers down. And it doesn't completely stop it from rocking, but as you can see, a lot more stable. And if you take those off, you can see it just kind of, wants to go right over. Again, put those back down again, and she sits pretty nice. So, pretty cool. So again, stabilizers, it's the same control for the skitter raise and lower blade. All maps, so every single map, we've had a very tiny change to the physics on the trees. Not completely major, but there has been a change, and that change basically is to affect the rolling friction on these trees. So the rolling friction on the trees was an issue. If you're bunching up hills and you're trying to chuck the trees off to the side, they had a tendency to want to roll back down the hill or just continually do this kind of rolling effect down the hill, which was really frustrating. So now the rolling friction has been increased, and I played with the actual static and dynamic frictions a little bit as well. So when you're dumping trees on hills, they still slide down the hill towards you, but they don't generally want to roll off to the sides too violently, which is super nice. It just lets you pack your bunching piles a little bit firmer together. Next up, all mods fixed a ton of shader reflection mismatches on the machines. So there was a vote on the Discord because I was talking about making the machines shiny metal again, and the vote was very, very close between doing it and not doing it, so I decided to leave everything the same. So what I did instead is I applied a texture, well, a shader that has a little bit of a dirty kind of texture, I guess you could say. So as you can see, there's a tiny bit of reflection. It's not like crazy. The big problem a lot of people don't like is they don't like that bubble wrap effect. Like you can kind of see it on these tracks a little bit, how they have that like blue bubbly glow to them. So people don't want that on the machines for the most part. I've gotten a lot of emails about it, so it's not happening. Don't worry. I'll leave it as is. So they do have a tiny bit of gleam to them, so you can see that they reflect, but they're not reflective in a shiny way. And if you get up really close, you can see the little kind of new shader that's a little bit like dirt texture. I'm going to try to get close enough. You can just see like it's kind of got these little speckles and stuff. In the last version of all the mods, it was a very clear, clean, almost cartoony look. It still is, in my opinion, a little bit cartoony looking, but at least now it's got those little tiny glints of dirt and dust to kind of give it a little bit better of an effect. We have now gone back to one single version. So there's only one version of each machine. They're all low cab machines. There's levelers and there's non-levelers. So looking at our list of goodies here, so scrolling through this list, you can see that everything in the low cab department is now low cabs. So they're all low cab machines. There's no buncher version anymore. There's no difference. And what I did was, I'm just going to buy one here. What I did was I found a nice medium place. Just going to pick this up and move it because we can. A nice medium place where the booms are not super short, but they're not super long. So they're kind of a middle class. And I created a new attachment joint on these heads that allows the rotation of all the way back to a buncher type position to all the way down into a grapple type position. And I'm sure I'll get comments. I know this is absolutely not realistic because certain types of machines and booms are built for certain jobs. But I realize we're playing a video game and I'm getting a lot of complaints about people trying to use the buncher version machines for things that aren't bunchers and people trying to use the other versions of the machines for buncher heads when they're not. And it's really frustrating for me and really frustrating for players. So now there's one version of every machine that can do everything. So this cat now has this arm on it. If you really want to go bunching with this thing, you absolutely can. Do I recommend it? No, I don't. I don't recommend using this as a buncher because it kind of it's not really set up for a buncher in real life. But in this game, because of this tilt joint on there, you can absolutely use it as a buncher now if you really want to. So the point being, you can do whatever you want with the machines. It's your choice to do what you want. Certain machines in real life are built differently. I just have to make that disclaimer. I take no responsibility for what people do with them now that I've given the ability to do whatever you want with them. So it's a good change because, one, we don't have a double version of every machine. We save a lot of file space. As you'll notice, the download is almost like, I don't know, 40% less size. So the next thing we're going to get onto is winches. So this is going to be a very interesting / controversial subject. So we have now added winches to every single machine, and I'm going to demonstrate these in a little cut here in a minute. So we have winches on every single one of these machines. Now, the kicker is these winches only work if you have the Platinum DLC downloaded and working. Now, I realize we had winches before, but these winches from the DLC are actually 10 times to 20 million times better than the ones we had. They're very awesome. They have like a pulley rope that actually is dynamically working with the ground and has physics and stuff, and it's pretty cool. So if you don't have the DLC, it's not forcing you to download the DLC or buy the DLC. You can still run all these mods without the DLC. All that'll happen is just these winches will not work. So these winches that are on these machines won't work unless you have the Platinum DLC. So I did a vote on Discord and I asked how many people had the DLC, and it was like a 500-to-1 ratio. So most people already have the Platinum DLC with the forestry equipment, so I don't think this will be a big kicker for a lot of people. And the people who don't have it, I mean, I encourage you to get it if you want to enjoy the features of the new setup, but you don't have to get it. You can still use these machines just fine without it. Just certain features of the winches won't work for you, so no big deal. So in this update, we are doing the grand introduction to steep slope logging. And what I mean by that is in previous versions of my downloads, the tracks were basically Velcroed to the ground, so you could drive up any hill in the world and it wouldn't stop or wouldn't slow down. There's been a huge change to the way the winches will help you go up the hills and stuff, and that's related to frictions and transmissions and all kinds of stuff that I've done to get winch support for doing steep slope, which we're going to go into in just a sec here. Okay, so before I get into a demonstration showing off how the winches actually work, I just wanted to tell you which machines have them. So all the forwarders, well, we only have one forwarder, but all forwarders in the future have one. So there's one on the front and there's one on the rear of the forwarder. So if you're doing some weird steep slope stuff or you get stuck and you want to move into a weird spot, there is a winch on the front and the back of all forwarders. There's a winch on the back and the front of all skitters. So there's one little winch that's hiding behind the blade there. You can use that one. And then there's one winch on the back. So basically every single machine now has the ability to be a cable skitter too, if you really want to look at it that way. So they have them, and every single track machine, except for the Pro Pack Delimber. That's the only one that didn't have the winch. And the reason for that is because the Pro Pack is really not doing anything steep slope. The Pro Pack only works on flat ground anyway, and that's the Delimber with the big boomy arm on it. So all those do, and the trucks. So all the trucks have these on them as well. Little winch on the front so you can pull yourself up a hill or out of a ditch. There's only one, and it's on the front. There isn't anything on the back of these guys. I want to go over the tracks a bit. So all the track machines now have a changed track dynamic. And what I mean by that is the tracks have a new transmission, they have new slippage, they have new friction, they have new suspension, completely redone whole driving system in this game. Previous versions, the tracks never moved. The tracks were solid until you started driving them. In this one now, the tracks actually have sort of a neutral transmission state. So they actually move back and forth. So as you can see, I'm pushing it, the tracks are moving on their own while I'm pushing it. And what this does is it allows us to use the winch system really effectively. It allows it to pull the machine up and down really steep slopes without putting tension on the actual grip of the friction on the tracks. Normally, I wouldn't imagine anybody wanting to go up there with an excavator or try to ascend this hill. So if you try to drive straight up the hill, you're going to see that the tracks will give out. They'll probably slip, they'll probably have issues. You'll get to a point where eventually the tracks just won't let you go anymore. I mean, actually, they're doing pretty good here, but once we get to this next incline, it'll just start spinning kind of like that. So once you start spinning, it's going to try to roll back on you, and your tracks will just let you go back down the hill, which you don't want, which is why you never want to ascend a hill like this with such a sketchy incline. So instead, we have these little winches, and I'm actually going to bring it, we'll try to slip right through here. So you can hit R, which again drags out the winch, and I'm going to put it way up in this tree. So I'm going to jump, and then you just hit B to actually place the winch itself. So sometimes when you're on these weird inclines, the winch goes through the ground. That's nothing to do with me. That's just the way the game is. So Control K and Control M make the cable go in and out. You can set them to whatever you want. I set it on one of my joysticks so that I can tighten it up. So as you can see, as I pull the cable, it pulls it tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. Now, if you go to the outside view, you can see that cable will actually start to kind of separate off the machine a little bit. Again, that's some giant's work there. Now, you don't want to put this thing under full load and have it pull you up the hill because the game's not perfect when it comes to that. So instead, what you want to do is start trekking up the hill as if you're trying to get up it. And then as you're going up the hill, you'll start to give out, right? Your tracks are giving out. But if you keep putting tension on that winch, it'll actually support you as you pull yourself up the hill. So now, like I said, we got a little bit of tension on that winch, and it's actually helping us. Eventually, like if I let off on the winch, we'll find a spot where it's not helping us anymore. Then you just put a little more pressure on the winch, a little bit more pressure, a little bit more pressure, until it starts helping you up the hill again. And then once you get to the top of the hill, you want to kind of chill out on that winch. You don't want to pull too hard, because if you do, you're going to be in some trouble. So there we go. Now when I hit the top of the hill, you can release the winch, back it off. You'll start to see it go slack, kind of droops down like that. And then you can either turn around, go back down the hill, do some crazy stuff. Oops, better tighten up on that before we go flying down the hill. So again, we're kind of descending the hill now. But as you can see, that winch is really supporting us here. I'm not putting any gas on the machine at all. But as I start to let off the winch, it'll actually kind of let me creep down the hill here. Again, I'm just doing this with the winch alone, and I'm just letting it kind of let me down the hill gently. And so if I cut the winch entirely, we can see how much is holding it. So I cut the winch entirely. So there you go. That just tells you how much the winch was holding you. So if you really want to play with those types of inclines, you absolutely can. We now have the ability to do something called jump turns. And jump turns are very popular in running heavy equipment. A jump turn basically is when you want to turn your excavator track, but you don't want to try to dig into the ground, spin on the spot. I can basically put my head down slightly, and I can actually roll the machine around a lot easier in a circle. It basically allows you to do something called a jump turn, which is you're lifting your tracks and providing less friction to the ground so that you can slide around in a circle. Now, in the previous update, I used to do this all the time when I was playing, but it didn't actually work. But now, as you can see, it does really smooth turns while you're working. The one annoying downfall with the tracks is an issue that we used to have. So right now, I can sit here with my machine, turn my head, spin around in a circle, and life is good. So right now we're running at 60 frames a second, smooth play, no problem. Now what happens is if I turn on physics mode, or if you get a frame rate drop, so now my frame rate has dropped down to 19 frames a second, which is terrible, terrible frame rate. What happens is if I spin, the machine wants to slide side to side. And all that is because of low frame rate, and the physics basically recalculate at a slower processing rate when you have a low frame rate. So if you have a really rough computer and it's really, really bad and slow, this is going to be something that happens. And the only way to fix it is to crank up the friction really high on the tracks, but then unfortunately it comes with a whole bunch of other terrible things. So as you can see, the tracks like to dance, but the second you regain your frames, no problem. The machine acts just as it should. So this is a very frustrating thing for me that I wish would go away, but I cannot make it go away without ruining 90% of the other features of the machine. So if you have bad frame rate, your machine is going to swing god-awfully side to side. The only way I've been able to mitigate that is to work slower. If you're whipping your head around really fast and you have a low frame rate, your tracks are going to spin around on you. But it doesn't do it if you work really slow or if you keep your frames above 30. It seems to be good. Okay, so we're just switching over to a new map here. I just wanted to show you guys the new grapples and log physics. There are a ton of other things on the patch notes, but a lot of the stuff are really minor. So I'm trying to keep this video as not long as possible. If I go over every tiny little thing, it'll take hours. So I just wanted to go over kind of the main stuff. So the winches, the big change, all the steep slope stuff is going to be a new change for sure. There's tons of other little fixes and changes and redesigns in the booms and just little tiny stuff, but you guys can read the patch notes below for all the info on that. The other big change is the grapples. So all the grapples have been improved with the new weights. So having these new lower weights allows me to kind of play with the physics a little bit more. So I've actually found a way to make it so these grapples grab really, 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 really well. And really smoothly, almost like real life. So they just grab a lot nicer. They roll the logs up a lot nicer compared to the last update. The last update, they kind of hung up on the logs and were a little bit jittery. But yeah, all the grapples have been upgraded. You'll find they're way easier to grab. The logs are way more sturdy in them, and they don't wiggle around all crazy. The processor, I improved these knives on the back end. So a lot of people had complaints about the knives on the back end not grabbing the trees very well. They were a bit flimsy. So I do have to make them a teeny bit flimsy. And when I say flimsy, I mean they have to be able to bend a little bit. So when I push them on the ground, let's see if you can see this here. You see how they kind of bend a little bit when you put weight on them? I have to have a little bit of bend to them, otherwise they grab the trees too hard and you can't process them properly. So I think I found a nice kind of happy medium between grabbing and not grabbing. But now they don't bounce around and act all flimsy like they did in the previous ones. Now you can really get into those piles really easy, grab, and it's really smooth for running them through manually. And like I said, grabbing the logs individually is really, really easy. So that's a nice little change too. With the new one version machine, so this is a buncher and a processor machine. There is no more separation between the two. The biggest issue I had was the spin speed on the head compared to a grapple. So when you're using a grapple on this machine, it spins at the regular pace, but if you're using a buncher head, it was way too fast. So now what you're going to find is when you're using this buncher head, the rotation has almost a little bit of a hydraulic-y float feel to it. So it still turns, but not crazy fast. As you can see, it turns kind of at a medium speed. It's not crazy fast, but it kind of has like a little bit of a float. So when I stop, you see how it kind of goes a little bit, floats back and forth. That's due to playing with the physics and the components. So we were having issues where if you were to hit a tree while turning, it would cause kind of a weird glitch, or it would kind of launch the trees in a really weird way. So now with this kind of a softer turn, like you just got to give it a couple taps and it'll roll really nice. But you'll find that the trees actually settle a lot nicer in your grabs when you're cutting. And it just feels a lot better. And you'll find way less glitches, like when you're grabbing bunches of trees. Let's see if we can get a few here. When you're grabbing big bunches of trees, you're gonna notice it feels a little bit more, I don't know what the word to describe it is, hydraulic-y when you're grabbing these. So when you go to actually turn your head from side to side, it's a nice smooth rotation when you're tapping, as opposed to a really jerky kind of fast movement. So yeah, that's pretty much all the major stuff. Again, this is a huge update. There's a lot of changes and lots of things. So in the comments below this video, there will be a huge commented post from me that's pinned. It'll have all of the changes, and there's a whole crap ton of stuff that I didn't go over. That's just minor fixes and changes and weird little tiny things that happened. But yeah, have that give that a good read through and let me know what you think there. But yeah, this is a very good update. Lots of changes, lots of positivity. If you guys do find any issues, please go to the FDR Logging website under bug reporting, fill out the form and send it to me if you find something. It's been very helpful in redoing machines and finding stuff that even I miss. So anyway, that is everything. I look forward to you guys trying this out. It's going to be awesome. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Bye.